Japan has announced sanctions against Russia over its actions in Ukraine. The sanctions cover the issuance of Russian bonds in Japan and also target two breakaway rebel regions in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin had recognized their claim to independence on Monday. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida announced the Japanese sanctions earlier today.
Japan has decided to impose the following sanctions. First, we will suspend issuing visas to certain individuals of the two so-called republics of Donetsk and Luhansk and freeze their assets. Second, we will introduce import and export bans on the two so-called republics. Third, we will prohibit the issuance and distribution of Russian bonds in Japan. Should the situation worsen in the future, we will work with the G7 and other international communities to quickly take further actions.
Joining me now for more from Tokyo is journalist Michael Penn. Michael, do we know how or even if these sanctions will hurt Russia?
It's pretty clear that these sanctions will have almost zero effect. And in fact, they seem to have been designed to have almost zero effect. So, for example, one of the sanctions says that people from these territories in Ukraine will not be able to have visas to come to Japan or not be able to trade with Japan. Well, clearly, there's not much trade between Donetsk and Tokyo. And right now, almost all foreigners anywhere in the world can't come into Japan because of COVID policies. So the idea that they won't issue visas to people from that territory is pretty much the same policy for the rest of the world at the moment. So they're not really, their sanctions are basically symbolic to say that they're sanctions. They're clearly designed not to bite, not to have a real effect.
So if they are not meant to have the real effect, what is the real reason behind them?
Well, the point is to say that Tokyo has imposed sanctions. In doing so, they're sort of making what they would say is sort of a moral statement, on the side of international legality. But the real reason is because, Japan wants to keep a very close relationship with the United States. It's very concerned about the rise of China, and it's put strong value on the U.S.-Japan alliance. So, in a sense, by keeping close with the United States on the Russia issue, it means that Japan can expect a strong backing from the United States when it has its own security problems, possibly in East Asia. So that would be the real key reason why Japan is going along with this.
The area that you talk about in East Asia forms part of the larger Indo-Pacific, of which Japan is a key player. And a number of Japanese diplomats have spoken over the past few days, and they have talked about following the rules-based international order because it is applicable not just in the Indo-Pacific, but also in the case of Ukraine. Is that also another rationale behind this?
It's certainly a rationale which they will give, and it's part of sort of let's call it the diplomatic posture of Japan. It is true that, the Japanese society and Japanese within, their own country are generally, rule-abiding people. But I think that if they found their national interests served by breaking the law, so for example, let's say on the issue of whaling, they'll do so. But in most cases, they present themselves as rule-abiding and force for the rule of law in East Asia, in the world.
Journalist Michael Penn in Tokyo, thanks so much for breaking that down for us.
Thank you.